Howdy, folks. I am Alan for today's news. I will be reading and speaking about world news, interesting news, news to keep you entertained, and news to keep you informed. First thing I got for you is from USA Today. Gas leaf blowers and lawnmowers are shockingly bad for the planet. Bans are beginning to spread.
Denver, your lawn may be the next climate change battleground. And parks. And playgrounds. Regulators and clean air advocates are increasingly eyeing the pollution emitted by small gasoline engines used to power lawn mowers and leaf blowers as they seek to blunt climate change. Advocates say using a commercial gas leaf blower for an hour produces emissions equal to driving from Denver to Los Angeles. Among cities and states with bans or limits, California, Burlington, Vermont, Vancouver, Canada, and Washington, D.C. Start the day smarter. Get all the news you need in your inbox. While many critics first attacked the small engines for the noise they make, experts say these small two-stroke engines release shockingly large amounts of pollution, two problems that modern and increasingly affordable electric-powered equipment solves. The absence of noisy leaf blowers is already being felt in Washington. You used to hear them all day, everywhere you went. And now you don't, said Susan Orleans, who helped pass DC's toughest-in-the-nation ban on gas-powered leaf blowers. What states and cities have moved to ban gas lawn equipment? California has already taken the biggest step in banning the engines, which are formally known as small off-road engines, or SORs. California's ban phases in next year and prohibits the sale of new small gas engines. People can keep using the ones they already own and can resell used ones. Washington, D.C. has a much stricter ban, barring the use of gas-powered leaf blowers by anyone within the district as of January 1, 2022, and levying $500 fines for violators, unless they're on federal property. The D.C. ban also allows anyone who sees or hears a gas-powered leaf blower to file a complaint. They don't need a city inspector to witness it. Denver area regulators are considering restrictions that primarily target large commercial and municipal users, but provide exemptions for homeowners. The Denver area ban is focused on reducing ozone pollution, which causes breathing difficulties while also contributing to climate change. The residential retail market is already responding, and most hardware and big-box stores now sell both electric and equipment. For the majority of residents who own single-family homes, it's going to be all electric, all day long, said Daniel Mabe, founder and president American Green Zone Alliance. AGZA advises organizations and governments on best practices to adopt when transitioning to electric equipment, but doesn't take a position in bans or restrictions. Why is gas lawn equipment being banned? Experts say lawn and garden equipment represents about 85% of all SORs in operation today nationally, and those engines are typically manufactured without pollution controls used on cars. Virtually all small engines are two-stroke, which burn a dirtier fuel mix than vehicles. Advocates say that in addition to the climate-changing emissions released by the engines, workers are exposed directly to their exhaust and rarely wear a filter to protect their lungs. Other people complain about the noise they make, especially when so many suburban residents now work from home. Transitioning to battery-powered landscaping equipment is a more sustainable alternative that would move us closer to meeting climate action goals and reduce harmful health effects, argues the California-based group Sandegans for Sustainable, Equitable and Quiet Equipment in Landscaping. What's the downside of electric lawn equipment? Critics say battery-powered machines aren't as strong as gas-powered ones, and also worry about having to buy new equipment, which is generally more expensive. Mabe said someone starting a small landscaping business could buy the necessary gas-powered equipment for about $6,000, but the electric equivalents could cost 3 times that. He added that organizations switching to electrics will need more space to store and charge batteries, and may also have to upgrade their electricity service to meet overnight charging demand. advocates argue that having a big state like California switch to electric equipment will create a marketplace that international manufacturers can count on, lowering prices overall as other states and cities enact similar bans. Like the District of Columbia, California is giving grants to small businesses that replace gas-powered equipment with electric. What if I want to keep my gas lawnmower or blower? Most existing proposals only limit the sale of new gas-powered equipment and allow people to keep using what they already own. But advocates say the transition to electric equipment is inevitable as the United States works to limit emissions of greenhouse gases and air pollution. Orland said she loaned her lawn care workers money so they could switch to battery-powered equipment. "We decided we had to take that first step and we are all so pleased," she added. Full screen.
Okay, that's all I got on that one there. I played the whole article there. And what I don't like here is right here. It says Washington, D.C. has a much stricter ban, barring the use of gas-powered leaf blowers by anyone within the district as of January 1st, 2022, but levying $500 fines for violators unless they're on federal property. So does that mean federal property is exempt? They're better than everybody else? The feds don't want to pay for the upgrade? That's not right. That's wrong. Definitely wrong. Anyway, let me get my next one. This one here is from Business Insider. Russian commanders are brutally punishing their own soldiers by putting them in holes in the ground, UK intel says.
Russian commanders are punishing soldiers by putting them in holes in the ground covered with metal grills. The makeshift cells are used for misdemeanors, including drunkenness and refusing to fight. Enforcing discipline has become more draconian since General Valery Gerasimov took over War Command. Full screen. Russian commanders are likely punishing their soldiers by putting them in improvised cells consisting of holes in the ground covered with a metal grill, the UK Ministry of Defence said. These makeshift underground cells, known as zindans, are used to punish misdemeanors, including drunkenness and attempting to terminate their contacts. The ministry pointed to multiple recent reports from Russian personnel about the use of such holes in an intelligence update on Sunday. The ministry reported earlier this month that Russian troops are dying in Ukraine due to incidents linked to alcohol consumption. There have previously been reports of Russian soldiers getting into drunken brawls, which have sometimes been deadly. Since the early days of the war, reports have also emerged of Russian troops mutinying and refusing to fight. While Russian commanders generally took a light touch in enforcing discipline in the early months of the war and often allowed soldiers to quietly return home if they refused to fight, they have more strictly enforced discipline since the fall of 2022, the UK Defence Department noted. These increasingly draconian methods have increased even further since General Valery Gerasimov took over command of the war in Ukraine in January 2023. Russia has continued to suffer heavy losses in Ukraine. It has not confirmed the number of casualties, but the Center for Strategic and International Studies estimated in February that between 60,000 and 70,000 Russian soldiers have been killed in Ukraine.
So it sounds like to me the Russians letting their soldiers drink on the job. I can hear them now. Best of vodka. Let me go on to the next one. This one from USA Today. A former Colorado officer is the first to be convicted of failure to intervene under state law.
A former Colorado police officer last week became the first to be convicted by a jury of failing to intervene after jurors found she did not step in when another officer choked a man and beat him with a gun during an arrest in 2021. Francine Martinez will be sentenced in June after she was found guilty under a police accountability law passed in the wake of the 2020 murder of George Floyd, which made it illegal for officers not to step in when they witness unlawful physical force, according to a press release from Office of the District Attorney for Colorado's 18th Judicial District. Martinez was fired after an internal investigation found she violated several department policies during the violent arrest of Black Army veteran Kyle Vinson, according to the Aurora Police Department. John Hobart, who was also charged in connection with the arrest, resigned amid the internal investigation. State Representative Leslie Herod said the 2020 law she helped craft will lead to a culture shift across the state's law enforcement agencies. I believe that provisions around duty to intervene and duty to report with criminal consequences, which is important, there must be criminal consequences, will really start to weed out and show the face of law enforcement officers that are doing harm in our communities, she said.
And there's more to read if you want to read more about it. And there's a lot of bad cops out there. There's good cops, but there's a lot of bad ones out there. And the bad ones been being busted little by little each day for the last 2 years. But they're going to have to start thinking. You know, not work on their hatred. Anyway, let me go to the next one. This one is from the Daily Digest. Saudi company draws unlimited American water as West suffers drought.
What's going on with the water crises in the West? A Saudi Arabian company banned from growing a water-hungry crop in its own country is instead using American resources during one of the worst droughts in centuries. Fondamont Farms is owned by one of Saudi Arabia's largest dairy companies and has been growing water-intensive alfalfa in Arizona at a time when the state supply is low. Farming alfalfa has been illegal in the mostly desert country of Saudi Arabia since 2016 because of how much water it takes to produce the crop, according to The Guardian. But the alfalfa isn't used for consumption by humans. Instead, the crop is farmed to provide feed for Saudi Arabian cows owned by Fondamont's parent company, Al Marai.
And I had something like this on my news article before. There's more to read on it if you want to read on it. That's for 21. I'm going to go on my next one now. This from 1945. Hunter Biden could go to jail tomorrow.
Hunter Biden to appear in court Monday. Hunter Biden will appear in an Independence County, Arkansas courtroom on Monday for a contempt hearing that could see the first son hauled off to county jail. What did Hunter Biden do wrong? Hunter Biden has not responded to any of the motions by an attorney for former Washington, D.C. stripper London Roberts, and her attorney filed a motion for contempt. That all parties are to physically appear for all future court hearings in this matter. The parties will no longer have their appearances excused, Judge Holly Meyer ruled earlier this month after Biden's attorney Brent Langdon claimed that Hunter Biden had yet another laptop at a repair shop. She imposed a gag order on discussion of the specifics of the case in March. Hunter Biden filed a motion in Arkansas' 17th Judicial Court last September claiming his financial circumstance had experienced a substantial material change. The same court ruled in 2020 that Biden had to provide health care coverage and child support for their shared daughter Navy Joan Roberts. London Roberts also filed to change her daughter's surname to Biden, which Hunter Biden has challenged. Mr. Biden claims to be nothing more than a Yale-educated attorney/artist who is somewhat financially destitute and needs his child support adjusted, Roberts attorney Clint Lancaster wrote in a 12-page discovery brief challenging Biden. The brief continued, however, for an artist living on meager means, Mr. Biden is living lavishly. He travels the world on the safest and most comfortable airplane in existence, Air Force One, the attorney added. He also has some of the most expensive attorneys on planet Earth. Hunter Biden attorney Abe Lowell charges $855 per hour for legal work, which Lancaster argued was a sign of Hunter Biden's wealth and prestige. Lancaster asked who is paying Biden's bills. He also inquired about how Biden paid for Kevin Morris, a Hollywood attorney who paid his $2 million in delinquent taxes. The motion also covers Hunter Biden attorneys George Mezires and Brent Langdon, who has been Biden's primary attorney in this case. If Mr. Biden can afford a Washington, D.C., Hollywood, Chicago big law, and the best domestic relations attorney on the Texas side of the Texarkana border, he surely must have income for child support purposes, Lancaster's motion said. Lancaster continued, payments to attorneys will show, there is no difficulty that a person with the last name Biden cannot fix with a Biden-paid or funded attorney. These payments will evince that there is respect, admiration, power, accolades, and not harassment or hardship due to the name Biden. The plaintiff has evidence that the defendant has not fully disclosed his income sources, residences, assets, and property. Lancaster previously challenged Biden's claim in October and vowed to depose Biden and have a forensic accountant go through his finances. He wanted information about Biden's artworks being sold by art dealer Georges Burgess, which they have been unwilling to provide.
Okay, now, there's guys have to pay child support that can't afford it, but they do it. Hunter Biden has a lot of money, and he's not paying. He's paying the lawyers the money he should be paying his ex, the one he got pregnant. This is the way our country is going with his dad, Joe Biden. You know, they're just playing around with other people's money. Let me go to the next one. This from Ukrainska Pravda. Fire breaks out in sanctioned Russia's factory manufacturing MLRS.
A fire broke out on the territory of the Motovilica plant defense holding in Perm, Russia. Source: Kommersant citing Ministry of Emergency Situations of the Russian Federation and Motovilica plant. Details: photos of the fire were posted by Perm's social networks. Smoke from the territory of the plant is visible from different locations in Perm. The Ministry of Emergency Situations of the Russian Federation stated that a report of a fire on the territory of PJSC Motovilica plants was received at 20:08. After arriving on location, it was established that the transformer booth was on fire. 37 people and 10 pieces of equipment from the Ministry of Emergency Situations of Russia were involved in extinguishing the fire. The previous area of the fire was 10 square meters. Quote, today, a fire broke out at the transformer substation on the territory of the enterprise. The fire was promptly contained by the specialists of the Ministry of Emergency Situations who went to the spot, the press office of the PJSC Motovilica plant reported.
And there's more to read. If you want to read the rest of them, not a whole lot more, just a little bit. I'm going to go to my next one now. This from the Wall Street Journal. Republicans effectively voted to raise taxes. They're fine with that. I don't like that.
Washington, Republicans finally found a tax increase they can support. The party, united for decades around the view that net tax increases are unacceptable, on Wednesday advanced debt ceiling legislation that would raise taxes by more than $300 billion over a decade, according to official congressional estimates. The bill, which passed in the GOP-controlled House and won't survive the Democratic-led Senate, would repeal clean energy tax credits that Congress created last year. The changes would shrink brakes for wind energy, solar power, hydrogen, and electric vehicles, effectively raising taxes on some manufacturers, car buyers, and others. Top Republicans see such clean energy subsidies as more like spending rather than tax reductions, and they say their debt ceiling bill would end such inefficient, expensive programs created by Democrats. They also promised that any final bill wouldn't include net tax increases. Republicans continue to oppose tax hikes President Biden has proposed for high-income households and corporations, and they are proposing further tax cuts for businesses and individuals. Still, their willingness to advance a bill that the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says would raise tax revenue shows Republicans are less focused on official tax tallies and more determined to reverse Mr. Biden's agenda. We know that these green energy policies that the Biden administration has forced down the throat of Americans is not good for this country, said Representative Drew Ferguson, Artsiga. It's not good for American competitiveness, and I really don't care what the CBO score is. What I care about is doing the right thing. The House legislation would raise the debt ceiling in exchange for deep government spending cuts and was aimed at jump-starting talks with Mr. Biden. The White House has insisted that Congress raise the $31.4 trillion borrowing limit without any other provisions attached. The CBO found that the House GOP bill would cut projected government deficits by $4.8 trillion over 10 years, before a few minor last-minute revisions. The bill contains tax increases that total at least $515 billion over a decade, according to the Nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation. That estimate is likely low because it doesn't yet include the effect of eliminating electric vehicle credits, which would likely raise billions of dollars more. The House bill included one revenue-reducing provision, rescinding new enforcement funding for the Internal Revenue Service. That would lower tax revenue by $191 billion, so when laid against the energy tax changes, the bill still raises taxes overall. In the past, that imbalance might have given Republicans heartburn. The GOP-backed 2017 tax law, for example, repealed or limited many tax breaks, but those were far outweighed by tax cuts. Republicans sparred among themselves in 2011 over whether to curb ethanol tax breaks without cutting taxes elsewhere. Most Republicans have signed a no-tax hike pledge written by Grover Norquist's Americans for Tax Reform. As top party leaders rallied votes for the debt ceiling bill, they promised lawmakers that the final version won't raise taxes.
Okay, that sounds better. Let me go to the next one here. This from Business Insider. An air train in China runs using an overhead magnet track, never touching it as it glides through the air 30 feet above the ground.
An air train in China runs using an overhead magnetic track, never touching it as it glides through the air 30 feet above the ground. See it in action. An air train in China is said to be the world's first suspended maglev train system that uses permanent magnets. It can operate without power, gliding through the air without ever making contact with the track above it, and there's no rail underneath it. Take a look at the red rail.
See what these pictures shows here. Not showing no moving pictures though. Anyway, let me go to my next one. This one from 1945, flying aircraft carriers. The U.S. Navy next game changer.
What would it take to build a true flying aircraft carrier? There is an often told story of how the British hard rock band Led Zeppelin came up with its name. The newly formed group had finished some of the obligatory concert schedule of the late 1960s supergroup, the Yardbirds. Initially dubbed simply the New Yardbirds, the band changed their name after Keith Moon of The Who suggested they would go down like a lead balloon, and hence Led Zeppelin. That piece of rock music trivia may have little connection with military history, apart from the fact that Led Zeppelin II was based on a photograph of the Jagdstaffel 11 Division of the Imperial German Air Force, also known as the Flying Circus and led by Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron. However, This brings up the viability of actual military hardware, namely a flying aircraft carrier. While such a craft has captured the attention of our imagination for decades, the truth is that it too would take off like a Led Zeppelin, and not of the rock and roll variety. What works in the movies, whether it is the helicarrier from the Marvel Universe or the mobile airstrip from Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, would simply be too large to ever take flight. Such a platform that could fly over land and water and become a floating airbase in the sky would require a significant investment, but more importantly, it would require a purpose-built construction facility just to handle the project. How it would be powered is another issue entirely, and it is doubtful any nation would want a nuclear-powered craft flying over it. Flying aircraft carrier, lighter than air attempts. The only successful attempts to actually build a flying carrier were the U.S. Navy's two rigid airships, USS Macon and USS Akron, which were built in the 1920s. Neither had the runway that the fictional craft featured and instead carried 5 lightweight Curtiss F-9C Sparrowhawk biplanes that could be launched and recovered via a hook system that lowered them into the airstream. It must be stressed that weight was such a factor that it is doubtful that any heavier planes could have been successfully carried on the rigid airships. Even had this concept proved successful, such aircraft were completely outdated by the Second World War and would have been utterly useless in anything other than perhaps scouting missions. Dive bombers and torpedo planes would have been too heavy to launch in the airstream, and virtually impossible to recover. Simply put, the rigid airships were already too late when they were developed in the 1920s. Then there was the fact that their mission capabilities were limited.
And there's more to read on that if you want to read the rest of it. It's a long article. I'm going to the next one here. This one here is from Best Life. CVS accused of intentionally lying to customers about their prescriptions.
CVS is one of the largest drugstore chains in the U.S., with many of us relying on our local store for everyday necessities and, of course, medication. CVS makes it fairly simple to keep tabs on your prescriptions through the CVS mobile app, providing updates when your meds are ordered, filled, and ready for pickup. But while the drugstore chain is transparent about this process, a group of lawmakers are now alleging that CVS is intentionally lying to customers about their prescriptions. Read on to find out why they claim CVS is spreading misinformation. Picking up prescriptions isn't usually too much of a hassle, but it's more convenient if you don't have to head to the pharmacy as often. That's why 90-day prescriptions are so popular. You only have to refill and pick up your medication every 3 months. This option also saves time for patients who need doctor authorization before each refill, Fox 23 News reported. Now, however, CVS told customers in Oklahoma that 90-day prescriptions were no longer an option for them. Last month, some customers received a letter from CVS Caremark, the Pharmacy Benefit Manager, PBM, for CVS Health, explaining that they would no longer receive 90-day prescription refills, K4 reported. This primarily affected Oklahoma employees who work for companies outside of Oklahoma, but according to Fox 23 News, some retirees also received letters saying they can only get 30-day supplies. CVS said the change is a result of a law passed by the Oklahoma legislature in 2019, the Patients' Right to Pharmacy Choice Act. The law was enacted to let customers fill prescriptions at the drugstore of their choosing, prohibiting PBMs like CVS Caremark from steering them to their affiliated pharmacies, per Tulsa World. But according to lawmakers, this legislation has no effect on 90-day prescriptions. Following an influx of calls from confused citizens, a group of Oklahoma lawmakers held a press conference on Monday, April 24. "Let me be as direct as I know how to be," House Majority Floor Leader John Echols said, per K4. The state of Oklahoma did not get rid of the ability to fill 90-day prescriptions. Anyone that says that is not misinformed, they don't misunderstand. They are intentionally lying to you, and we're not going to stand for it. Representative Marcus McIntyre claimed that the move is actually a business decision on CVS part and that the company needs to own it. We knew that the regulations that we passed, we knew that would result in blowback from the industry, the pharmacy benefit industry, and we are seeing that now, McIntyre said, per Fox 23 News. Senator Greg McCourtney slammed CVS for lying to older adults who need medication. When you start lying to senior citizens about their ability to get their medicine, about their ability to pay for their medicine, then you drag someone who tries really hard not to be in the press room down to the press room, McCourtney said. Best Life reached out to CVS for comment on the issue, and will update the story with their response. The Oklahoma Insurance Department, OID, is also involved in the dispute, and Commissioner Glenn Mulready noted that he's been working with CVS since 2019 when the Patients' Right to Pharmacy Choice Act was passed. Mulready claimed that CVS has not been consistent when explaining the rationale behind its decision to stop allowing 90-day prescriptions. When I go to them to fix this issue, it's a technical and contractual issue with their employers, Mulready said. They tell me they can't fix that until next year. This is one of the largest companies in the world, a hundreds of billions of dollar company. You tell me you can't put resources towards that to get that fixed quickly for Oklahoma consumers? I find that disingenuous at best. Officials claim this isn't the first time that CVS Caremark has violated the law. Fox 23 News reports that over the past 2 years, the OID has received over 100 complaints from patients who allege CVS Caremark required them to use an affiliated pharmacy. Now, the OID is taking action. On May 25, the department will ask a judge to suspend or revoke CVS Caremark's PBM license in Oklahoma. For its part, CVS Health said that it's working with Oklahoma officials to address ongoing issues. We share the commitment of Commissioner Mulready and Oklahoma lawmakers to protecting Oklahomans' access to affordable prescription drugs, and we look forward to continued dialogue with the Oklahoma Insurance Department, OID, and our clients to advance that shared goal, the company said in a statement to News 9. The OID recently determined that legislation enacted in 2019 is applicable to prescription benefits for certain multi-state or national employers headquartered outside the state of Oklahoma, the statement continued. We have discussed with the OID our concerns about the impact changing uniform benefit design could have on consumers who rely on 90-day prescriptions. We continue to discuss this matter with the Commissioner and look forward to resolving this situation with OID to avoid any interruption to patient benefits and protect Oklahomans' access to affordable prescription drugs.
This is basically about Oklahoma, I guess, but I don't live in Oklahoma, and I get my high blood pressure from Walmart. They used to give me 90 days. Now they start getting me 30 days, which costs a little more. I never asked them about it. Never asked my doctor about it. Let me go to my last one here. This one from Business Insider. I got a job as a Waffle House server and pays $2.92 an hour, and now realize why there's a labor shortage. What do you say?
Amanda Claypool started working at Waffle House once a week to try and understand the labor shortage. Claypool was shocked when she realized Waffle House charged her $3.15 per shift for a meal credit. She enjoys working at Waffle House, but says she's glad it isn't the source of her livelihood. Full screen. As a new server at Waffle House, I earn $2.92 per hour plus tips. Remarkably, this is above the minimum wage for tipped workers, which currently sits at $2.13 an hour. But Waffle House is just a side gig for me. When I'm not at Waffle House, I'm a freelance writer and strategy consultant. During a cross-country road trip in 2021, I started noticing a rise in roadside restaurants desperate for workers. It made it seem like no one wants to work anymore, so I became curious about what it's like to work in the food industry right now. I started looking for a part-time job. After searching for a couple months, Waffle House gave me a chance, and I started working there once a week. The money isn't much, but what shocked me the most about serving at Waffle House isn't the pay, it's the cost of employment itself. I spend $12.58 to work at Waffle House each shift. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Not even at Waffle House. Even though I make $2.92 an hour, I'm docked $3.15 per shift for a meal credit, regardless of whether or not I eat anything. I basically work an hour for free. The special non-slip shoes I had to buy before my first shift cost me $28. The 14-mile round-trip commute to my restaurant comes to about $9.43 in unrealized commuting expenses each shift. Each week around $3.75 is taken out for taxes. These expenses all add up over time. In some ways, I'm paying for the privilege of working at a restaurant. I make about $75 in tips, on average, during a 7-hour shift as a server at Waffle House. During my first 4 training shifts, I made $11 in tips. I knew I wasn't going to make much money during those shifts because I was basically helping my trainer run her section. I practiced taking orders, delivered food, and did most of the dishes. Aside from the $11 that a couple of customers gave directly to me, I didn't get any other tips. But I was okay with that. After all, this was my trainer's livelihood, not mine, and I earned an hourly rate of $12 during that time. After I completed my training, I was allowed to tend my own tables and keep 100% of my tips. In total, I've worked 54 full-time hours, spread out across 8.5 shifts, and I've earned about $343 in cash tips. This includes a couple of pennies I found on the floor. This is my first time working solely for tips, and it's confusing. I've worked in the service industry before, but not solely for tips. In America, servers are legally compensated at an actual poverty wage. The justification is that customers are expected to tip the waitstaff. But that's not always the case. Restaurants are supposed to pitch in with a tip credit to bring servers up to an unofficial minimum wage that varies by state. My pay stubs have shown several different pay rates, $2.92 or $3.13, and $12. It's confusing. I think the $12 was my training rate. Either way, I was told I'll never make less than $11.50 an hour. Another thing that surprised me about working at Waffle House is that I'm not always tending to customers. There's other work that has to be done too. I have to sweep the floors, clean my own dishes, and refill the salt and pepper shakers at my tables. But dirty floors and stacks of dishes don't leave tips. There's a learning curve to serving at Waffle House, and its systems are a bit old-fashioned, but I don't mind. Orders are written by hand in a ticket book. When I'm ready to call an order in, I stand on a little square box behind the counter and yell the order to the cook. There's a code for everything. Orders have to be written a certain way and called out using special phrases. After working many shifts, I was still trying to figure out how to properly call orders. Once that's done, tickets are priced by hand, with a calculator. When I took the job, I thought I'd hate it, but it's really satisfying. To be honest, I've always dreaded the idea of being a server. But it's grown on me. I know the names of regulars, and they know mine. I like taking their orders and chatting with them. Believe it or not, I like doing the dishes too. It's really satisfying to clean stacks of plates and realize I've completed a task. That's something I never had working at a traditional 9-to-5 desk job. Your inbox is always full and meetings seem to go on forever. At those jobs, there was never a sense of completion that I get at Waffle House. I've realized being an employee is kind of expensive nowadays. After almost 9 shifts, Waffle House had paid me about $320 post-taxes. When I added that to my tips, it came to a little over $660, or $12.24 an hour. But when you factor in the costs of employment, my startup costs, the commute, taxes, and my shift meal, my hourly rate is much lower. The amount of cash I actually have on hand is closer to $9 per hour, not $12. Low wages is why employers are struggling to find workers. My Waffle House coworkers are some of the hardest working people I've ever met. They've worked there for many years and they love their jobs. But I'm fortunate that Waffle House isn't the source of my livelihood. I became a server because I was curious. I got tired of listening to people trying to tell me what the labor shortage is all about without experiencing it for themselves. Based on how much I've made in tips, I think some jobs just cost more to show up to than they're actually worth to work.
Okay, I played that whole article there because I figured it was interesting. It reminded me back in the late 60s, early 70s, something like that. My first job was Steak and Shake, a curb boy, and I made 85 cents an hour, and you actually make most of your money with tips. And this curb manager, he wanted me to see. There's one side of the building you make a lot of money in tips. The other side of the building you don't hardly get any customers. And he wanted me to work the slow side, And I said no. I said I came to work. I came to make money. And long story short, they ended up firing me, but I didn't care because I wasn't going to make 85 cents an hour. Period. Even back then. Anyway, that's all I got for you. I hope you enjoy my news today. And remember, I'm Alan for today's news. I will be reading and speaking about world news, interesting news, news to keep you entertained, and news to keep you informed. And don't forget to like, subscribe, at least come back once in a while. You never know what I'll have here for you. I thank you for watching. Until next time, later.